Hello and welcome to episode 117 of the Yoga Life podcast. I'm your host Kevin, and today we're going to find out, what does a doula do? What is hypnobirthing? What exactly is involved in daddy baby yoga? And this is why I've brought in Emily McElarney. I got in contact with Emily because I was looking for daddy baby yoga classes, and here she is today. Emily's also a member of AIMS Ireland, which is the Association for Improvements in Maternity Services Ireland. So she knows her stuff. We cover a lot and a bit more. If you enjoy this podcast at any stage, please leave a review on iTunes or like, subscribe, share with a friend. If you would like to practice yoga with me online, no babies involved, just myself on a screen, you can do that by visiting kevinboyyoga.ie/membership. And it's a 3 weeks trial. I've added 40-minute classes now as well. I'm going to be adding a 45-minute class this week. And it's an online platform where you can simply practice at your leisure, as they say in America, or in England we say, in Ireland we say leisure. But yeah, at your pleasure even. So any information about that, check it out online. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please leave feedback, a review on iTunes if you found it funny or informative. And without further ado, here is Emily. Hey, Emily.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great.
Great. Let me slide this a little bit closer towards you. Let's start with, what does a doula do?
What does the doula do? A doulaing. That's what I do. I never feel comfortable about that word doulaing. I'm not sure it's the right one. But okay, so what does a doula do? Well, primarily we are like an additional layer of support around a birthing couple. So we would go in and meet a couple. You know, sometimes it can be fairly early on in the pregnancy, but it would definitely be a few weeks, you know, ideally before the due time. And we would build a relationship with the couple, get to know them. And then we would do a lot of work on birth preferences. So work out, you know, what the couple hopes to experience during birth, what's important to them, and then help them put birth preference sheet together so that they can communicate to the hospital, you know, what they're hoping will happen. And like I would always say birth preference rather than a birth plan, because a plan is something you're going to stick to come hell or high water. But birth preference is, should everything be going, you know, the way we're hoping it will go, here are some of the things that are important to us.
Right.
So we do that, we do a lot of work around that. And then I'd go on call for a month. So 2 weeks before the due date and 2 weeks after, I'd be on call. And it's really just waiting for the call, which can come at any time, morning, noon or night, usually at night for some reason.
Why is that?
There's no actual reason behind it. But I mean, a lot of our womanly cycles are linked to the moon. So I blame the moon myself.
Okay, so women are more likely to give birth at night time.
Don't quote me on that, but a lot of my calls have been at night.
Because I've heard that as well.
Yeah. And a full moon will do it for you as well. So just watch out for the moon.
Because of the tide and...
Because of the water, the pull on the water. Yeah, it usually kind of gets things going as well. And midwives will tell you that. They go into work and it's a full moon. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to be busy tonight.
And then when you get the call, whenever that comes, what do you do then?
So it's different for every woman. Some people will call at the very first little tingle or twinge or something that their instinct has said, oh, maybe something's happening. And some will call much later, nearly, you know, when they're in really progressed labour. So it's whenever the time is right for them. It's instinctive. And all of birthing is instinctive. It's all instinctive. And you have to remember, and I harp on about this all the time in my work, animals don't do classes, they don't read books, they don't do any of that. They don't do hypnobirthing, and they completely rely on instinct. And we're no different. We are no different at all. So if we just tune into that instinct, it'll tell us exactly what to do and what we need to do. And if we just stick to that, you know, things can have a much more positive outcome. But it's hard, especially if you're going into a hospital kind of scenario. It can be difficult because, you'll question your instinct, you know, against other things that are going on around you. So that's where the difficulty can arise. But to go back to doulaing, I would arrive. I often joke with my clients, you know, if I get there and the mom is the life and soul of the party and she's like, hi, how are you? I'm like, oh gosh, we're going to be here a long time.
Why is that?
Yeah. So if, you know, if you're lovely, jolly person, you're not in really active labor yet.
Oh, I see. The beast hasn't come out.
Active labor is a grumpy time, and it's because we're so focused on all of these things that are going on inside us, and we're working so hard that you're really not very chatty in labor. Now, there's no rules here, you know. Obviously, some people are, and I specifically remember on my second birth, I tried to be the life and soul of the party because my husband had said to me after our first birth experience of our first child, he had said, God, you know, you never said a word all the way through that, which you'll get to know, Kevin, is very unlike me. He said, you never said a word, and I would kind of like to know if you were okay. So the second time around, that was on my mind, and I was trying to be chatty and everything, and I do feel maybe took away from it a little bit, you know. We just get very focused and inward when, you know, the going really starts to get tough. So, so a grumpy labouring woman means progression.
It's go time.
Progression.
So are you there for the birth? Are you in the actual labour room?
So I would labour with the couple at home, and then when the couple feel that they want to, if they're having a hospital birth rather than a home birth, and they feel that they want to go into the hospital, I will go in with them. I always remember one of my first clients as a doula, I learned a really valuable lesson. So they had decided they wanted to go into the hospital, and I said to them, okay, you go in your car and I'll follow behind, and I'll see you, you know, as soon as we get to the hospital, I'll be there. No, because we got out of the front door, they got into the car, he took off like a bat out of hell. And I was initially trying to keep up, and then I said to myself, hang on a minute, he's got a woman in labour in his car. If he gets stopped by the guards, you know, that's a class excuse. I have nothing.
Like, what are you doing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I said, right, I'm going to have to slow down. So I actually pulled over and I texted him and I said, listen, I'm going to be there a few minutes after you. So they went in and everything. So lesson 1 in doulaing, do not try and keep up with the birthing car. So I'd go in with them and I'd be with them then until their baby's born.
Okay. So when you go in to the hospital the labour room, do you have to explain to the doctors what your role is, or do they know you already? Have they met you already?
No. So we wouldn't, unless, you know people from your work, you know, and you've met them before, healthcare providers. But no, you wouldn't. And it's in Ireland, if you want to have a doula present at your birth, in a lot of the units you need to write to the hospital and ask permission to have a doula accompany you, because in most, and this is pre-COVID now I'm talking, most of the maternity units, of which there are 19 in the country, most of them require you to do that. There are a couple of units with an open doula policy, the Coombe being one of them. The Coombe is the only one in Dublin. The rest you need to write and ask permission to have a doula present. So you need to get a letter from the director of midwifery saying it's okay for your doula to accompany with your partner, and then you need to produce that. Now, as a doula, I mean, I've been left sitting in hospital receptions with my client upstairs asking for me, and security refusing me not allowing me to go in, even though I have this magical letter. So it's not always plain sailing, but it can be difficult. And I don't know, I think there's an attitude sometimes, some healthcare providers don't like to have doulas around. Yeah. So it can be tricky, you know. Others are delighted to just facilitate the woman's choices, but some aren't that way.
Yeah. Do you think because they feel that there's too many instructions or something that may potentially, or they feel a bit overwhelmed when there's an extra person there?
I think it's a few things. I mean, predominantly we're there just as an additional layer of support.
Yeah.
You know, and when you go through this soon, hopefully, Kevin,
Hopefully soon.
it's a lot of work, you know. There's a lot to do to support a birthing woman. You know, your support is informational. You're helping her to understand information that's been given to her, and you're helping her to give information as well. It's a practical support. So you're getting things for her when she needs them. You're mopping her brow. You're massaging an ache. You're helping her up and out into different positions. So it's a very practical support. There's a physical support, you know, in terms of massage and different things that you can do that can be really so helpful. It's an emotional support. You know, you're there to provide emotional support. So if you have two people who can tag team and do that, it makes it much easier, because remember, this can go on for a long time, especially on a first baby.
Really?
Yeah, so it can go on for a long time. So, you know, having a tag team and being able to, you know, one person step out and maybe get some fresh air or whatever, and having your doula there, you know, to keep that continuous support going is gold. It really is. And, you know, all the evidence shows that continuity of support has better outcomes in the birthing process.
Okay. We were talking before we started recording about the physical side of things. I was saying how Rach is being into the gym and she's being very active and working on endurance, as it were.
Yeah.
But there's the physical endurance, but then there's also the mental endurance as well.
Yeah.
What is hypnobirthing?
So, hypnobirthing it's basically like a toolkit of different tools that you can use that keep your mind in a good, positive place, believing that you can birth your baby, and allow your body then to complete the function of birth without interruption. We give birth with our mind just as much as we do with our body. So having the mind in a place, because the mind controls your hormone system. And what you need for birth is oxytocin. Oxytocin makes contractions. And I always say to my clients, you want the big contractions. You don't think you want those, but you do, because they're doing something. You don't want the little piddly ones. You have to have millions of them. But one big contraction can do loads. So that's what you want. And for that to happen, you need oxytocin. It makes the contractions. And oxytocin is the hormone of love. It's the hormone of feeling safe. It's the hormone of cuddles and darkness and woolly socks and fluffy dogs and all of that. So that is not conducive to a hospital experience. So what you have to do is bring oxytocin conductors with you to the hospital to keep that oxytocin buzz going. It'll be grand here when you're at home because you're in your nest. But how do you bring that into the hospital? So hypnobirthing will explain that to you, help you to understand it, and then help you to have a toolkit of things that you can do to keep those happy vibes going when you're birthing your baby. And then the body can just do what it was built to do.
Yeah, because I think when you see birthing in movies or on TV, it seems very dramatic, that like bright white room and a lot of screaming and hands being squeezed, and it seems like something that's very intense, like I'm sure it is intense, whereas when you talk about darkness and quiet and coziness, I don't think of a labor room. That's not my impression from what I've seen in TV and stuff. So with the hypnobirthing process, because some people might think that it's like, I would say it sounds, I mean, it has the word hypno in it. It's like hypnotherapy. How close is it to traditional hypnotherapy?
Okay, well, so first of all, there are no pendulums, okay? There's no look into my eyes. I always say, and especially partners tend to be really wary of hypnobirthing. And like my own partner was the same. I had to drag him in. And, you know, I've seen that hundreds of times in my own classes, but I usually kind of hook them in on the first class, get them on side. But people it is, I don't know whether you would call it an unfortunate name, but it does put some people off, okay? But the hypno element of hypnobirthing, all that means is going into a deep relaxation. So it's more meditative birthing. It's more mindful birthing, you know. But in hypnosis, and I am not a hypnotherapist, so I cannot speak as a hypnotherapist here, and nor do I want to be, incidentally. But in hypnosis, what you're doing is you're putting the kind of active, critical part of your mind on pause and letting it go asleep a little bit, and you're just opening the other part of your mind, and that's the part of your mind that triggers those lovely hormones of oxytocin and endorphins, which we want bucket loads of in birth. And we want to keep this more stressful hormones out of it, because they're the hormones that create pain, and that is the key.
So therefore, would adrenaline be a bad hormone?
Yeah, we don't want adrenaline.
You don't want
there at
adrenaline.
all. Now, there is an argument that adrenaline has a function right at the very end. And we were talking there about triathlons and marathons and stuff, okay? Adrenaline will get you over the line at the end.
Yeah.
So there is an argument that adrenaline could be useful right at the very end point, but it is definitely not useful earlier on in labour, because adrenaline kickstarts our fight or flight response,
Right.
okay? So it changes what the body is trying to do. First, we were giving birth, and that's what the body was working on. And now something has happened. Adrenaline has been released. And now the body's saying, okay, got to pause that, because now I need to protect myself, or I need to run away. And what that does then, it's like any animal in nature, we can shut our birthing down. We can say, no, it's not safe for my young here. I won't birth here. And, you know, we can completely shut it down until we feel the time is right. And I always, when I'm teaching hypnobirthing, I always give this little anecdote about my cat when I was a kid, right? But this might be my early interest in birthing. But we had this cat that was having kittens, and the cat went in under my brother's bed, and these were much anticipated kittens. So we went in under the bed as well to look at the cat. The cat, obviously we were annoying it, and we were in its space, and the cat had one kitten under the bed, picked the kitten up in its mouth, ran through the house, jumped to the top shelf of our hot press, which was a good 7-foot jump, and had 3 more kittens up there.
Wow.
Okay, so that is that in action. You can shut it down if you feel it's unsafe until you find a safer place. So that's why adrenaline is not good for birth, because what it does is the body will say, no, I'm not going to open up because it's not safe for my baby here. So instead of the cervix opening, the cervix will go, nah, not doing it. And that is, in medical terms, termed failure to progress, which is awful, because first you're frightened and now you're a failure. So that doesn't help anyone, really, does it? And a lot of the medical terminology is really negative like that. So that's another thing that we do in hypnobirthing, is we reframe the language around birthing to be more positive.
Yeah, that's it's interesting, because I think that when you go into a hospital environment, I suppose it has to be quite clinical, quite they need to see everything that's going on, and everything is cleaned, and they want to keep everything hygienic, as it were. But then that maybe is counterproductive to what you're there to do, because you want to feel like you're safe. And also as well, lying down. If you lie down, I imagine that isn't an efficient way to give birth, as opposed to just because of gravity.
No person should ever be lying down giving birth.
But then if they're in hospital, are they generally encouraged to lie down?
Not anymore. So
Really?
it certainly used to be the practice, and you might wonder, where did lying down come from? You know, all you ever see in movies is a woman lying on her back with her legs in the air, which incidentally doesn't do much for the oxytocin. You know, no woman wants to be lying spread eagled, you know, for the world to see. It's just not how we go about our business.
I getcha.
So where it came from actually was when we started to train obstetricians. Women were encouraged to lie on their back because the obstetrician could see better. So it was purely about function for the obstetrician and not about the woman or the baby. And you're absolutely right. If you lie on your back, you're going against gravity, and you have to work 10 times harder. If you're using gravity, so you're upright, you're maybe in a squatting position, you're maybe on all fours, you could be standing, you could be on your knees. Very common for women to get into a position where they're kind of on their knees, leaning over something. For birthing, then you're getting the full force of gravity, and you don't need to push if you have gravity on your side and if you're actively birthing. And that is where the active birth movement came from, which was started by an amazing woman called Janet Velasquez in the UK. She was a yoga teacher, and I got to meet her once, and it was like a serious fangirl moment. But yeah, she's amazing. And she began the active birth movement when birthing became very medicalized in the UK. And she was encouraging women, don't get on the bed. And I would always say that to my clients, don't get on the bed. The bed is a prop. You're not sick. You don't need to be in a bed. Use the bed as a prop. Keep moving.
Prop as in to put your hands on.
To put your hands on, or maybe to use for squatting, or, you know, and the bed is great. You can lower it right down to the ground, or you can raise it up quite high. So it's a really good prop to use. You know, there's handles down the end of the bed that you can use for squatting. And squatting is by far, you know, the most beneficial position for birthing and for moving your baby down.
How does squatting compare to all? Because some people can't. I mean, I assume that I can't squat very well, and that I was a minority. But actually, I know, I won't say who told me, but they were at this workshop, and it was a women's workshop, and it's a pregnancy one. And in the pregnancy workshop, the women were asked to squat, and you know, you can see on camera, and most of them couldn't squat either. So that, which amazed me, because I just assumed most women can squat quite comfortably, just because of the shape of the hips and that. So if you couldn't squat, what about all fours?
Oh, all fours is great as well. But the really key thing you need to remember is you need a good distance between the knees, because you're all the time creating space for a baby to come down. So if we are closed in, there's nowhere for baby to go, you know? So you always have to think in your mind. I use a little acronym, UFO. We need to be upright, forward, and open.
Okay.
And that, what I'm talking about there is the pelvis. So the pelvis is upright, it's tipped forward, and it's open. There's nothing obstructing. And actually, when you lie on your back, you close the pelvic inlet. You make the space for baby to come out smaller. When you're upright, forward, and open, you increase the size of the pelvic outlet.
Interesting. Yeah, that would make sense. Last week, I was chatting to Helena Tubridy about I have to really enunciate that surname, because it's I'm so used to saying Ryan Tubridy.
Ah, right.
So that's why I said Helena.
Okay.
So, but shout out to Helena. We were talking about fertility, and we were comparing like generations before to now in terms of how fertile we are. So what I'm interested to understand is, what do you think about modern life has made it potentially, I'm assuming, more difficult to give birth? I'm assuming it's more difficult to birth than it was, because people have been, maybe I'm wrong. Is it?
I don't know. I don't know if it is or not. I think the medicalization of birth has, of course, increased safety in a lot of ways, but has also made birthing more difficult, because when I do hypnobirthing classes, and you know, I'd have a group of couples, and you'd have usually a lot of them would be first time pregnancies, and I do a little exercise with them first. Is, you know, I get them to jot down what they feel about birth, their real feelings about it, what they feel about it, and what are you afraid of. And giving birth actually never comes up as a fear. What comes up as things they're afraid of is hospital stuff. It's medical intervention. It's all the medical stuff. I'm afraid of forceps. I'm afraid of an episiotomy.
What's that?
An episiotomy is a surgical incision in the perineum. So it's to make more space for a baby to come out.
Is the perineum in the vagina?
The perineum is the little bit of skin between the vagina and the anus. So it's a surgical incision of that. And
you can tell now I'm a fishing adult because I said the word vagina.
Yeah.
Just being medical.
I do make a point of saying vagina in every interview I do, so I can now tick that off.
I got that one before you.
So yeah.
Sorry. So the perineum.
The perineum, yeah,
is the bit between the front bit and the back bit.
Yeah.
Is that the same for man?
I presume so.
Do we have a perineum as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if it's called perineum. Interesting question.
I know,
I'll have to
I
look
know,
that up.
like slang terms for it, but I'm not going to bring the
Yeah,
podcast
I
down.
don't want to know.
Go on. Sorry. So they make an incision there.
Yeah, now I have to say that routine episiotomy, which is the name of that incision, is not recommended by the WHO, and they recommend that episiotomy is only carried out in very extreme circumstances, and they would pretty much be weighing towards it not happening at all. And I must also point out that our episiotomy rate in Ireland is in the kind of 30% for first-time mothers.
30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Around 30%.
Okay. Well, it makes sense why they would. Well, it doesn't make sense, but I understand why they would do that. But so that you said intervention. So the episiotomy.
Those kind of things. They're the things that frighten people, and they're the things that they've heard in horror stories about birth. And horror stories have a really big function in birth, because if your head is full of these horrific stories that people just love to tell, especially when they see a bump walking down the street, then that's what comes into the mind when you're birthing. So that's another function of hypnobirthing, is to address. I very passionately believe, you can't say to someone, oh, that won't happen to you, don't worry about it, or come on, don't worry about it, just think positive. That's not realistic, okay? Because you can never say that won't happen to you. It might. So what you need to do is address the fear. Okay, well, if this situation comes up, how am I going to deal with that? Let's kind of do a little contingency. Or how can I prevent that intervention happening? And that's what I would work on in my classes. Now, sometimes they're not preventable, because a lot of them are life-saving interventions, okay? But in my opinion, they are overused. And a lot of them are overused because interventions work on a cascade basis, okay? So as soon as you have the first intervention, which might be a sweep of the membranes, or induction, might be the first intervention you have. It lines you up for the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And they work like that on a cascade basis. So if you're somebody that's saying to yourself, oh, I really don't want to have an episiotomy, I mean, you can never firstly say that's not going to happen. You can hope it won't happen. But you also need to say to yourself, well, what am I going to do to lessen the risk of that happening? And to do that, you need to start at the very beginning and avoid the first intervention.
I've heard the word induction used a lot. I understand what the outcome is. How is that administered? Like, how do they induce someone? So
there's a few different ways, and it depends on, and I have to say, I am not a midwife, so, this is only my take on it, and I'm not giving anyone any medical advice. But there's a few different ways of induction. You might get a prostaglandin gel, which is like a gel that they insert into the cervix, and that softens and gets the cervix ready for birth. It might be artificial rupture of the membranes, which is breaking the waters. So, but the cervix you need to be able to get at the waters to break them. So that's a form of induction. Or it might be being hooked up to an oxytocin drip, which is a synthetic oxytocin. And I say to people, like, you have oxytocin in abundance there yourself, that you made yourself, an organic version, tap into that first before. Yeah. As I say, these interventions are there because they're often life-saving and necessary. But if everything is okay with baby and everything is okay with you, and you're someone who doesn't want to experience medical interventions, then this is where your informed consent comes in, and everything the hospital recommends to you is just that. It's a recommendation, it's a suggestion, but you don't have to do it. You will often hear women saying, oh, they wouldn't let me go further than 12 days over, or I wasn't allowed to wait until Tuesday to see if my baby would come. You are allowed, it is your baby, your body, your birth. If you don't want an intervention and you are informed, you understand the benefits, the risks, the alternatives. If your baby is doing okay in there and you're okay to be pregnant for another few days, and it only ever is another few days. No baby in the history of the world ever stayed in there. So remember that. We tell ourselves all sorts of things. And I know that, like, I've had 3 overdue babies. So, You know, I get it. I now understand that perfection takes time, Kevin. You know? But, you know, it can be a long wait and it can be a frustrating wait. But all babies come out when they're ready.
So what you're saying then is that oxytocin actually releases, it kind of is a trigger then for the baby to know to come.
Yeah. So when the baby, we still don't know exactly what the chain of events is to make birth happen.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that it's a mystery, and I hope it's always a mystery. You know, there's few mysteries in life these days. But we know that when baby's ready, it presses the button and oxytocin is released in the mom's brain, and that creates contractions and gets contractions going.
Right, okay.
And in hypnobirthing, we don't say contractions, by the way.
What do you say?
Because the economy contracted, and that's not very nice.
Oh, yeah. What do you say then instead?
We say surges.
Okay.
Which is a nicer word. And it's a better description, you know. It's like a surge of power, and then it's gone.
Yeah, it sounds like you're progressing.
Surge, and it's gone. It's a positive word. It sounds like a good thing.
So what role then can the partner play in helping? In the whole, so they have you, let's say, they're listening to the hypnobirthing, or they have visits with you, they have the doula. What about the partner? What can they be doing to make their missus more, make the experience more pleasurable?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, and look, it can be really pleasurable. Like, I mean, I loved giving birth. Now, I'm not telling you I was...
You loved giving birth?
Loved giving birth. Now, I'm not telling you I was full of the joys. You know, I was working harder than I've ever worked in my entire life. I was pushed to the furthest point that I've ever been pushed in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get complacent in my work, you know, and I've been extremely lucky to have 3 really positive birth experiences. So, you know, it's easy to say, oh, you'll be grand, you know, just do this and do that and you'll be grand and it'll be great, you'll have a great time. But you can never forget that it is really difficult. And as you said yourself, it's emotional, it's physical, you're going to be pushed to the limits.
Yeah.
But you can do it because your body was built to do it.
Yeah.
And what you need to do it is support. Support is crucial. It's crucial because it releases those oxytocin hormones. Endorphins are hugely important because they're nature's pain relief.
Yeah.
So when we're full of oxytocin, we're full of endorphins and we feel we can do it. And that mindset of, oh, I believe I can do this, will get you through. But unfortunately, in the hospital scenario, everything from your very first visit plants the seed that you can't do it. Implies, sometimes very subtly, that you're going to need assistance. And therein lies the problem. And that's why hypnobirthing is a thing, you know? So I usually use the analogy of a marathon, right? I ran my first marathon last year. And
fair play.
Thank you.
Your first one?
That's my first one, yeah.
Okay.
And I did it for lots of reasons, but one of the drivers for it was, you know, to remind myself what it feels like to be pushed as physically and as hard as you can so that I can not get complacent with my clients. You know, I need to remember what that's like.
Yeah.
So I kind of use this analogy with birthing because birthing is like a marathon. It can take a long time. Okay. So it's definitely not a sprint. And, you know, if you were getting ready to do a marathon or a triathlon or any kind of, you know, big physical challenge, and you're kind of doing your stretches there at the starting line and getting ready, and someone comes up to you and says, hi, now we're just going to hook this monitor up to you here just to make sure that nothing terrible happens to you along the way. You know, what's that going to do for you? Are you going to run that marathon or triathlon? Probably not. Possibly not. And then you hear 2 people on the sidelines chatting and they're saying, oh, do you remember you did that? That was awful. Do you remember when you ran that marathon? Oh my God, I'd never do it again. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. And this happened and that happened and the other happened. Is that going to do much for your marathon mojo? No. And this is the situation that we find ourselves in the hospital scenario oftentimes. Everything implies that something is going to go wrong. We're going to need medical assistance. We're going to need help. And we're not able to do this thing called birth by ourselves. And the truth is, we are able. if we get support. But support is crucial. And that's support of a partner, support of healthcare providers, support of a midwife, and continuity of care.
You know, the medical providers, obviously you're doing your best, the mother's doing her best, and they're doing their best, medical providers. But and I mean, I can't speak for being a mother or a pregnant lady, so, but what it seems like you're getting at is that it's about the what would you call someone who's about to give birth? A mother or pregnant person?
Some people don't like that because they don't consider themselves a mother until their baby's born, and some people do. So everyone's different. I usually say pregnant people because that's kind of more inclusive.
Okay,
I think.
So pregnant person,
yeah,
who's about to give birth, right? It's I assume, like, well, we know now mindset is so important, and what you said again before we started recording was about endurance. And now I want to be real frank here, because I think social media is fantastic, but often, well, always people put the highlights on.
Yeah,
they put the highlights on their social media. They don't put often they didn't put the shit stuff. When Rachel was in her first trimester, she was in bits for her first trimester. It was real difficult for her. She was sick and all that. But it gets better, in my experience. And, you know, me and Rachel have been going to the gym lately. And it's funny, when we're at the gym and she's like doing leg press or whatever, I'm there with her talking about her breathing. Exhale on the effort, inhale, bring it back. Watch your repetitions and your tempo, and saying, you know, can you add a bit more weight? How do you feel with that? And looking at her facial expressions. And I didn't realize it. I'm like, this feels like we're this sort of like giving birth.
Yeah.
Because, and every single time we wake up in the morning, Rachel would be like, not every time, but most of the time she's like, I don't really feel like it, whatever. But every time afterwards, she's like, I feel great now.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of you can do it. Mind over matter, endurance, and understanding the power of words and also your breathing. Like, I involved in different sports, and sometimes you'll hear coaches saying things like, "Come on, don't quit," or "Don't stop."
Yeah.
Instead of "Keep going. You're doing really well. Brilliant. Try again."
Yeah.
And it's that negative reinforcement. And maybe it's an Irish English culture that we have. Like in Ireland and in England, you meet someone there, raining again today, or whatever about the virus. You go to America, oh, have a great day. Everything's, you know, the president, not this president, but the last president, was like, you know, yes, we can. Whereas kind of in English and Irish politics, it's a bit like, we'll see how it goes. So I think part of it is culture, but with kind of motivation and positive affirmations. Like Rach,
that's what I was going to say.
Rach was listening to your positive affirmation yesterday, and I was there listening as well. And just the words, we forget how powerful words can be, don't we? You know. So
totally.
Do you with those affirmations? Do you record them and send them to people, or do you normally do them in person where you talk to them?
Well, with affirmations, that track that you're talking about, I recorded at the beginning of the pandemic because I was hearing from so many women with so much anxiety, which I totally get, you know. And again, it wasn't anxiety about giving birth. It was anxiety about what's going to happen in the hospital when I get in there. That was where the anxiety was coming from. Yeah. And I recorded, I wrote like COVID kind of pandemic specific affirmations for that. But normally, you know, I teach a hypnobirthing course called the Wise Hippo Birthing Programme. And it originates from the UK. And there's a suite of hypnobirthing tracks. There's 6 tracks in total that you get as part of the course, and there's a birthing affirmations track as one of them. So I generally use those ones, but I just recorded my own this time for that specific reason because of the pandemic, and you know, they needed tweaking in terms of just reminding, you know, I have my own power, I can do this, I can untap this power, because I was really aware that a lot of women were birthing without their partners. And that was one of the restrictions, and still is in a lot of places, which is really, really difficult. And just on that, one of the things that really irks me about that is that partners are being classed as visitors. Partners are not visitors. They are a fundamental part of the birthing process. what we talked about earlier. They provide all those different layers of support: emotional, informational, practical, physical. They are not visitors. They're so important. They are the birthing champion, you know, and that's their role. So to class birth partners as visitors, I think is very unfair on both entities, on the birthing person and the partner. And the partner could be a doula either. You know, some women choose to birth with a doula at her side and not a partner, or maybe there isn't another partner. And doulas aren't being facilitated at all at the moment, to the best of my knowledge.
I don't understand why a partner wouldn't be allowed in, since especially because they live together, I assume.
Yeah.
But yet you're allowed 6 people in your house.
Yeah,
No?
It's none of it makes any sense.
Okay.
And where I'll point you towards is I volunteer for an amazing organisation called AIMS Ireland, and we're on it, is all I can say.
What does AIMS Ireland do?
AIMS Ireland is the Association for Improvements in the Maternity Services of Ireland, and we have been going for nearly 13 years. It's a lot of work. I'm support officer, so I run a support service by email. And it's providing information and support to maternity service users.
Yeah.
You know, it could be all different aspects of the maternity services. But yeah, I mean, the restrictions are very difficult for everybody. And we have been asking since March. We've written to both Minister for Health, we've written to the HSE, we've written to individual units, asking them for risk assessments that prove that having a partner by your side is dangerous or risky in some way, and to date we have received nothing. So
I suppose that is that's the current thing that people are upset about, is like the COVID. I think actually if you say the word COVID or coronavirus on a podcast, it gets demonetized.
Really?
But that's okay. I don't make any money from this
you
anyway.
can edit it all out.
But also, if you say a swear word as well, you get demonetized.
Right.
The videos, yeah. So,
Okay.
I do both, so it doesn't matter. But just interesting though, because I don't talk about the COVID that much anymore. But I think
unfortunately it is just a really big part of birthing at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's really difficult.
What's the story then with your maybe COVID has affected this as well, the daddy baby yoga classes?
Yeah,
'cause that's how I first contacted you.
Yeah.
I searched daddy baby yoga on Google, Dublin, and then yours was the first thing that came up.
I'm really glad about that.
Yeah. SEO.
Yeah, look, I absolutely adore working with new dads. Love it. I love it so much. And as I said there earlier, you know, sometimes they're dragged into classes and hypnobirthing classes, and like they're like, oh God, please don't say vagina to me, and all those things. And then you just see this amazing, and I know journey is such a silly word at the moment, but you see it, you can see it. Like they come in and they're all nervous and feeling uncomfortable, and then something just blossoms, you know, along the way, and it's incredible. And I've had dads coming in, you know, I devised a course a couple of years ago that was a mix of yoga and infant massage for dads. So the idea was, and it was in a lovely studio with a really amazing coffee shop underneath. So the idea was mom could go and have coffee by herself for 2 hours, and dad and baby would attend the class.
That's perfect.
And it was to kind of help bonding and confidence around your baby. And I think sometimes, you know, certainly the old-fashioned view is that men are a bit useless, which I really disagree with. And that, you know, so the idea was to kind of blow all that apart and just help dads to become more comfortable being with their babies by themselves and more confident. So, you know, the first kind of pilot classes I did, and the dads were coming in and they were obviously made go by their partners, and they were, you know, feeling really awkward and nervous. And for some of them, it might have been the first time they were with their baby on their own without that safety net of mom around.
Yeah.
And I did a 4-class course. I thought anything more than 4 classes was going to be pushing it a bit. And by the last class in the course, the dads were coming in with the babies in the slings,
They're all in.
fully wrapping their babies in slings, really confident, like just on top of the world, and just enjoying being a parent so much.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant, you know, that's absolutely lovely. But I'm sorry to tell you, it was really hard to keep that class going because I just couldn't get enough people to do it.
Before COVID or because of
Before
COVID?
COVID, yeah. I just couldn't get...
What's the main resistance?
I don't know, but
So
I just couldn't get people to
what do
sign
you
up.
what how so give me an example of like what do? You put the baby on the mat, you do a down dog and you look at the baby. How's it work?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of yoga. So I would always start with a breathing, doing like a bit of pranayama, a bit of, just let's come into the room and go. And especially if you've got all that nervous energy going on, you need to just offload that a little bit because the babies know. If whoever's with them is nervous, the babies are going to feed on that and they're going to be nervous as well. So we just do a little bit of breathing, bit of meditation, bit of visualization, just coming into the room, settling. And then we might start some gentle movement, and fun things, interacting with the baby, making eye contact with your baby. Such a simple thing, but so powerful, touch, so important. So we do some infant massage and I take them through the strokes. Now, I would always be demonstrating with a doll. And then, each parent would then stroke their own baby and I would give handouts. So it's all there, if you forget the strokes later on. And I do through my parent and baby yoga and my infant massage, like I do lots of little songs and rhymes. And because sometimes when you become a parent for the first time, you don't know any of the songs, but they might come back to you from your own childhood. But a lot of people... I know, I've talked to a lot of parents who say, I'm not really sure how to talk to a baby or what to say or any. And it's instinct. It all comes to you eventually. But it's nice to have a little helping hand, a few little rhymes and songs and things. And just encouraging that bond, which is amazing and will stand to both the parent and the baby for their entire lives.
Yeah.
So it's incredible.
I feel like I may not be the best yoga teacher. I may not be the best podcaster, but I'm going to be an exceptional dad. That's what I feel. That's my mission, because I've said to Rach, I'm willing to, well, not unwilling, that's probably because it affects everyone, but I'm accepting that I'm going to earn less money, but be at home more. I could work way more than I do if I want to.
Yeah.
But I'm going to choose not to and instead be present with my kid and hopefully kids as much as I can, because me and Rachel started watching this thing, actually Brian Malone sent it to us on Netflix called I think it's called The Beginning of Life, and it's a really fascinating documentary about birth and parenthood, early parenthood essentially. But one thing it says over and over again is 0 to 3, how important that time is. And I feel like I don't know. I'm not bigging myself. I don't mean to big myself up, but I feel like I don't really know what I'm good at in life. Like, what's my actual skill? I can't play guitar. I can't do. But I feel like, I don't know. I think I'll be a really good dad. Mind you, I must say, when I see other kids that aren't like before this, I've kind of been like, no, there's a kid. I don't know what to do, like how to react with it. But supposedly from this documentary, it was saying that when you have your own kid, the chemistry in your body changes. You release more oxytocin, as you were saying. And actually, you hear fellas saying, oh, when I became a father, it changed me. But actually, it does change your chemistry, your physical makeup, because you're looking after someone in a way you've never done before. And I really think that I'm gonna try and like play with them a lot, and also give them not just physically, like, because Rachel was saying to me about tummy time. And if they've got tummy time, then they get encouraged to use their neck muscles to lift their head. So I was thinking about what games I could play with her to build up her neck muscles and stuff like this. Without turning it into a workout. but I really want to be that involved. That's the main thing. And this other interesting thing the documentary said was that, say my dad's generation, they were like, oh, you look after the kid because you're the woman, right? And the man is kind of on the outside, and when he tries, this is the key thing, when he tries to look after the kid or do something, the woman sometimes will be like, no, you don't do it like that, you do it like this. And then he thinks, well, why should I bother? Whereas what we really learned from this podcast or this episode was that the man's going to do things differently to the woman. One partner's going to do things to the other partner, and the woman has to allow that to happen, because it takes a village to raise a child. That's the old
Absolutely.
African proverb.
Yeah. 100%. And I, in my classes, I always make all these points that you're saying. But the big one is, well, how we did it, right? Because I was breastfeeding my babies, and when you're breastfeeding your babies, they do want to be on you a lot and with you because you're the food source. Come on, it's that's intelligence.
Yeah.
And I remember my husband saying, God, look at the baby's eyes following you around the room. And then, if I went out of sight, you'd see the baby going, oh, this is not good. Where has she gone? And my husband used to think, gosh, why doesn't it feel safe with me? Why doesn't it want to be around me? And I said to him, listen, if the fridge got up and walked out of the room, you'd be kind of concerned. So, that's the way it is. And they feel safe. It's that primal safety mechanism. That's what keeps babies safe. And remember, babies are 100% dependent on us. They can't do anything for themselves. They depend on their carers for everything. So you cannot go wrong if the only mantra as a new parent you stick to is hold them. Just hold them. Never put them down. Just hold them all the time. That gives them safety, security, warmth, all of those amazing things. Skin to skin. If you can hold them skin to skin, even better.
That's what I'm planning. Would I get weird looks if I was walking down the street with a sling on, baby, and no shirt?
Absolutely not.
No?
Absolutely not.
Because I like rocking the old no shirt when I'm out. And it's funny how when you go outside, you don't often see people with no shirt on. Unless some people see with no shirt on, but I like to rock the no shirt.
Okay.
And sometimes no shoes, no socks either, just a pair of shorts. And I'm thinking, now, by the way, I don't mean to be preaching because I say all this, but maybe I'll become a parent and just be like, look, I'm knackered. Just whatever gets it done.
You may go out with no shirt because you're so tired that you forgot to put one on.
But I'm thinking we got the sling. Right, I've tried the sling on already.
Yeah.
And it fits me. And then put the baby in the sling, and then if I don't have a shirt on, is that good for the baby because they have that constant skin to skin contact?
Absolutely. Like skin to skin is like magic. It just opens up all your baby's senses for caring and feeding. It promotes feeding. It's incredible, and that's skin to skin with mommy or daddy or whoever.
You see, the thing
skin
is,
to skin
Emily,
is hugely beneficial.
To be completely honest, right, and this probably has never been addressed before. I looked up skin to skin contact, father to child, right? And I seen a picture of The Rock, Doulaing.
Oh,
Johnson,
yes,
right?
yeah.
And a really famous picture of him, he's doing skin to skin contact when the baby's first born. But it's The Rock, he's got loads of tattoos and there's something that lovely contrast, like that masculinity versus the little baby. It's so innocent, right? That lovely contrast. But to be honest, and maybe me and Rachel were looking at pictures of men with no shirt on with babies, and we're like, it looks weird. I know that's the terrible thing to say, but I thought to myself, I'm not used to seeing it. I'm so used to seeing.
It's probably not something we see that often.
That's what I mean. I think we get so conditioned by the media. I get so used to seeing women breastfeeding or with nursing a baby, but just I'm not used to seeing a man nursing a baby with no shirt on. But I that's what I plan to do, because I think that physicality, as you said, the most important thing you do is to hold them.
Did you know there's a beautiful ritual and tradition? I think it comes from Bali originally, where the baby doesn't touch the earth for 40 days after birth.
Why is that?
It's a ritual, it's a tradition. So the baby's constantly held. It doesn't make contact with the earth for 40 days.
Yeah.
And obviously that's really difficult when you have 3 other kids and other things too. So it's about the community coming together, raising the village, raising the baby, and the community hold the baby for the mom and dad when they can't hold the baby, or the partners or whoever, and the baby is held for 40 days. And I think that's so beautiful. And if we had that as a ritual tradition here, I think a lot of the problems of society mightn't be there, because we would all have that strong bond and feel that, we're important to someone and all of those things. So, oh God, I can't say it enough. Hold them. Just hold them. And
let other people hold them as well.
In Ireland, we have this kind of weird societal thing. I don't know. I don't know whether it's in the UK as well, but of this, you're spoiling that baby. You've that baby ruined. And it's a real Irish mammy thing to say. You've that baby ruined by holding it. And I just really need people to understand you cannot spoil a baby. You cannot. You're teaching them. When you hold a baby, you're teaching them, I will look after you, I will protect you, and I will keep you safe. How can that be wrong? How could that ever be wrong? And what you find then, and evidence has shown that babies who are nurtured in that way grow up to be very strong, independent-minded people, because they've had that connection and they felt they were worth it and that they were held and that they were loved from day one. So, and it's not to say if you don't get to hold your baby, and it's really important to say this because, you know, things can happen that people don't get to hold their babies for quite a while after birth. It can still happen. You know, it's like there's glue on the baby and glue on the parent. And when that glue meets, it sets, you know, and sparks fly and it creates this incredible bond. And it's best if it can happen immediately after birth. But if it doesn't, it can still happen. You know, you can still have that. But you need to, at all times, prioritize skin to skin holding your baby. So whenever you can get a hold of your baby, do it, you know, and don't be afraid. And skin to skin fixes everything. It really does. It's incredible.
I hate to say it, but the COVID thing has kind of added a layer of complexity when it comes to having visitors and kids. Yeah. But I'm going to try to I mean, obviously I want to be cautious of like germs and stuff, but to give our kid as much exposure to different types of people as possible, different, you know, not just family, but neighbors and people we know, friends. So because I remember when I was growing up, I spent so much time around my uncles, aunties, that I would look at them and be like, oh, there's other ways of being a human being that's different to my mum and dad. And that's so important. But yeah, I can't wait to see my dad and my mum holding their first grandchild. That really excites me. I can't wait.
It's absolute magic. It really is. It's so exciting.
Yeah. So Emily, if people want to find out more about you, where do they go?
About me. So my website is naturalbirth.ie. And I have a Facebook page, naturalbirth.ie. And what else do I have? I have Instagram, but I don't really use it, so I'm not even going to mention that. Okay. I probably should, you know, to be with the times, but I don't have time for that. I'm not on Twitter because it's not good for my blood pressure.
very, very wise. As Ricky Gervais
But yeah,
says,
you'll find me there. If you're needing support or information about anything to do with the maternity services and your journey through them, I highly recommend AIMS Ireland. If you send support@aimsireland.com an email, you'll get me on the other end of it. But also, we have an amazing team of people in AIMS, all voluntary. We don't receive any funding whatsoever, and we're just really passionate about supporting people through the maternity services. There's a lot of problems, but there's also a lot of really great things happening out there as well. So don't feel out in the cold. Come in. We also have a COVID support group, actually, which is important to mention for anybody pregnant during the pandemic, which is a Facebook group. So if you get in touch, we can put you in touch with that.
Brilliant. Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please leave a review on iTunes. It really helps the podcast. And if you'd like to practice with me online, 60, 45, 40, 30-minute classes and audio meditations, you can do that by visiting kevinboreyoga.ie/membership with a 3 weeks trial. Check it out. Any questions, comments, let me know. And until next week, have a good one.